And now, it's The Law Show on CL 650. A comprehensive look at everything you need to know about the law. Now, here's Sterling Fox.
Well, good morning, and welcome to The Law Show here on CIL 650. Nice to have you along with us. And on the program today, we're going to discuss, family law with our guests, the founding partners of Westside Family Law in Vancouver. A real pleasure to welcome back to the studio Mark Perry and Anna Perry. Nice to see you both. Good morning.
Good morning.
Tell us a little bit, Mark, about Westside Family Law. I understand there are expansion plans in the way for the fall, a few months from now. But tell us about the firm. Give us a little background about yourself and Anna.
Well, I was called to the bar in British Columbia, which means I became a lawyer. This is not when I started drinking.
Okay.
In 1986, and so coming up to 29 years in September. Anna and I started Westside Family Law as a firm in 2011, just 4 years ago.
Okay.
As you said in your introduction, we are expanding. We are taking some new space in the same building on West Broadway, but as of November, we'll be 7 lawyers.
Okay, wonderful stuff.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Really yes.
Well, growth is always good, Anna. It's always healthy, and it must feel good to be able to be part of something that is growing and expanding. Obviously, something good is happening at Westside Family Law.
Oh, definitely. We have a great crew of lawyers and staff, and I think our clients sense that, and of course get referrals, and of course there's our great reputation.
Okay, well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Mark was very forthcoming about being 29 years into his career. How about yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background. Are you a made in BC lawyer too?
I did my degree in Halifax at Dalhousie University.
Okay.
And then traveled west to do my articles. And then I was actually taught out at UBC for a while, and then a government lawyer for a while, and ended up after a period of time back in private practice. So a bit more varied in my career. I did commercial real estate and commercial finance, etc. So family law is my just grew out of that practice, oddly enough, because family law has what would I say, becomes all-consuming.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do 2 or 3 different kinds of law. At least I find that it's very hard to get that balance.
Right. So after going around the circuit a couple of times, you decided family law was where it mattered most for you to be, and you've abandoned everything else, and now with Mark founded Westside Family Law a few years ago, and obviously a very wise decision back a few years ago.
Definitely, definitely.
We're going to talk about high conflict situations in family law. But when we're talking about high conflict, family law is basically, we're dealing with matters pertaining to divorce and relationships and children and custody and all of those things. But when we talk specifically, Anna, about high conflict matters, what are we referring to?
Well, there's different kinds of high conflict matters, but just to put it in simple terms, it is when one or both parties are more engaged in fighting than resolving, if I can put it that way.
Okay. A lot of animosity, a lot of aggressive behavior, and attitude. Certainly attitude. You would think there's a lot of aggression in the attitude. Mark, a high conflict scenario. Give us an example. You two have been at it. You've been at it 29 years, you mentioned just a few minutes ago. I'm sure that over that span of time, you've encountered more than a few high conflict cases. Give us a couple of examples that Anna was alluding to.
Sure, absolutely. High conflict is often about children.
Okay.
It's often about where the children are going to live. It's often about who's going to make decisions for children. I had a case just a few months ago, ended up at a trial, and I was new counsel for the mother. And I was surprised. I knew this case had been before the courts for a long time. But I had not, in my preparation, actually counted how many court hearings. 40.
Really?
40 court applications brought by one person or the other. mostly were about the children.
Okay.
I mean, there were some financial issues they were also disputing, but that was quite shocking to me. I would have guessed well over 20, but I was taken aback when the judge actually said about the third day of the trial he had counted, and there was 40 court applications. So that's a high conflict case.
So a court application. Just to follow up on what Mark was saying, Anna, in the divorce proceedings, when one makes a court application, is that a move, if you will, to acquire a position or enhance a position, and so a judge is brought in to approve that? Is that a court application?
Very much so. That's a good way to put it. We think of it as putting affidavits together and making an application which gets filed, and you actually go to something called Chambers Court as opposed to trial court.
Okay,
so,
sure.
Yeah, Chambers Court deals with interim applications. So applications are things that happen sort of other than a final order, generally speaking, and they can be for anything: child support, spousal support, production of documents, restraining orders. And so those 40 applications would have certainly been about a multiplicity of potential issues. And with high conflict cases, of course, the defining factor is almost nothing gets agreed on. You never get consent. So in normal cases, you don't have 40 applications. You might have one or two.
Right.
So that's really through the roof what Mark described, but that's certainly the
Certainly
definition of high conflict.
That would be, you look it up in the law dictionary, and there's that case
That's
right there.
Yeah. She says, it should be black. He says it should be white.
Right.
There's no gray.
Okay.
there's no meeting of the minds. It's somewhere in between. There's no compromise.
But
that's high conflict.
in order for us to understand a little bit more about family law and the practice of family law, your business, what percentage of people who go through divorces and relationship breakups actually end up in these high conflict scenarios versus people who get it done in a reasonable, adult, and somewhat amicable fashion?
Right. A very, very small percentage are high conflict. And that's a very good thing, very obviously. It's hard to estimate what that is. In a typical firm of our size, 5 lawyers, we may have 4 or 5 high conflict cases per year.
Right.
The vast majority of the work we're doing is for people who have come to some amicable resolution of their issues. And what we're doing for them is trying to document that. We're trying to create an agreement that is enforceable, that is legal. So we're tweaking it, we're adding clarification, we're sorting out sort of issues. And that might be a minimal amount of work for us, or it might be a little bit more work, but it's not high conflict.
Okay.
The presiding idea for the client is they've come to an agreement.
Right.
They want to be amicable. They want to be reasonable. They want to compromise where appropriate.
Right.
And we're supportive of that.
Okay. Now, Anna, there are do-it-yourself mechanisms for people who try to avoid dealing with lawyers. You can do-it-yourself a will kit. You can go to a drugstore or a bookstore, and you can buy a will kit and fill in the blanks. I, being of sound mind and body, blah, blah, blah. Are there such kits for divorce? And if so, are they worth the paper they're written on?
Oh, well, there's a couple of approaches to that, yes. There is a Self-Help Council Press book for separation agreements and probably one for divorce. And then online, the court services the government has put together instructions for lay litigants who want to do their own divorce.
I've heard about those.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So there's 2 ways of filing it. You can file a joint divorce, which is rather interesting, and the other's just one party files and serves the other party, and then within a certain period of time, the divorce order gets issued.
Okay, so it is possible that people would do it themselves, but Mark is smiling rather broadly
Yeah,
here.
there's a reason for that, I think.
Only because the details, the minutia of details, just go on for days and days and days.
Right.
And it would be, I would think, almost impossible for lay people unaware of all of the details and the implications to cover them all off all by themselves.
I wouldn't go so far to say impossible.
But difficult?
But difficult,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. There's two anecdotes I want to share in regards to that. One is in regards to, you mentioned drafting your own will.
Right.
So I've known this story for forever. Apparently in England, they have an annual dinner of lawyers who deal with disputes about wills.
Okay.
So someone who's drafted the will and it goes before the court
Mm-hmm.
and there's a big argument and the lawyers earn a fair bit of money.
Sure.
So at this annual dinner, they have a toast to the person who prepares their own will. Because
Okay.
of course it means
It's everybody at the dinner is prosperous because of you.
yes.
Thank you.
That's right. So my own less elegant, thing about that is, I might meet with a client, and I've done this for years, and they've talked about, well, can I go and do this myself, and so on, and I've often referred them to the old Fram oil filter commercial, which goes along the lines of, you can pay me now. Or pay me later.
Right.
And if you remember that commercial,
I do remember now. Yes.
Is Fram a sponsor of this show?
No, they aren't.
But it goes along the lines of you can pay a minimal amount now for a product that will save you an awful lot of money in the future.
Right.
And to a great extent, that's what I might be communicating to somebody who says, "Can I go and do my own agreement?"
Mm-hmm.
Which is, yes, you can. And you can pay somebody a small amount of money to get one of these online kits. Unfortunately, you probably might be coming back to me to unwind this, to sort it out, to resolve the ambiguities that's been created in the agreement.
I see our producer, Dwayne Bishop, firing off a hasty email to the folks at Fram as we continue our conversation here this morning. So basically, Anna, even in a scenario where adults have agreed amicably and in quite civilized fashion to end the relationship, there is a framework for the finances, the children, and so on. It's still really smart for one or perhaps even both parties to seek out the advice of a lawyer at those early stages once the decision has been taken, and even in this very warm-ish, amicable environment. And comparatively speaking, it would be quite warm. Nonetheless, they would still be well served to see a lawyer, wouldn't they?
Oh, absolutely. To share one more war story, what we do quite a lot is untangle the messes created by people who've done their own divorce, because it is paper driven, and I can think off the top of my head of about 8 documents that you have to file, and some of them are sworn affidavits, etc. And they're not simple documents, I have to say. Even our applications for divorces get rejected on occasion for various defects. So I know that the registry is loaded with people's files that are stale dated because they didn't finish their self-help counsel divorce. They didn't, or they got stuck somewhere in the process and just couldn't find their way out of the paperwork mess.
Oh, okay. And has it ever happened, Mark, where someone has gone to this situation whereby an amicable solution has been reached? And I'm not talking about a kit now, but I'm talking about a scenario in which the couple agrees to separate. And is that the way people do it still? Is there the trial separation and then eventually leading to a complete separation followed by a divorce? That was kind of the old school way. Or do people now just sort of say, I'm out of here, see ya, we're done?
Well, every separation is really in effect a trial separation.
I suppose so, yeah.
And a divorce is the order from the court ending the legal marriage. But a separation, whether it's documented in a separation agreement and all issues been resolved, is really a trial separation.
Sure.
I mean, the parties can reconcile. They can rip up that agreement. They may have a clause that says if they go back to living together, the agreement is no longer in effect. It is a trial separation. So, from time to time, I may be preparing an interim separation agreement.
Okay.
That might just cover off some of the issues that are urgent that need to be addressed, and that might be a trial separation contract. And then, down the road, there's going to be a more complete separation agreement done. But that's pretty rare, frankly. It's a separation agreement that's being prepared, and it's a trial because the parties are going to act on whether they continue to be separate, and the marriage and the relationship more formally, and then it effectively just becomes their contract.
Anna, I saw you. I caught an expression across your face as Mark was beginning to respond. In some cases, clearly, though, there is a degree of hostility or animosity or whatever, and a separation, even if trial is not even something to consider. This is over, and that's that.
Oh, definitely. I think there's both streams of cases. Certainly in my work, my files are, I think, quite different. Mark's described maybe 5 to 8 files that are high conflict,
right.
Almost every one of mine is. My I don't know, but anyway, that's just the way it's developed. And so it's a joy to have a low conflict case such as he's described. That might be 1 in 10 for me.
Oh my. Okay. Well, it's wonderful that you're here, that both of you are here, because we are focusing a lot on high conflict matters on this episode of The Law Show. We're going to talk about custody and support and relocation issues, which of course in these mobile 2000s is becoming even more and more of an issue all the time. This is The Law Show on CIL 650. Our guests in studio from Westside Family Law, which is 1367 West Broadway in Vancouver, by the way, and online at westsidefamilylaw.ca. Mark Perry and Anna Perry are with us in studio with lots more still to come. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CIL 650.